So it's
Indeed.
my absolute pleasure to be joined by Caroline Ansell MP, MP for Eastbourne, elected in 2015 and then elected again in 2019. The Lib Dems couldn't keep you away for long and you were back to represent the good people of Eastbourne. But Caroline, before you entered the world of politics, you were a teacher. You were a senior leader and a specialist in modern foreign languages. And you have signed up to join Nadeem Zahawi's task force to come and support any teacher shortages. Can you give our listeners, our members, some insight as to your teaching career and why you've taken up the call to arms as set out by the Secretary of State?
Well, I think my teaching career has its genesis with my mum. Not because she was a teacher, although these things do run in families, do they not? But because she was so passionate that education was how you outperformed your start in life, how you made your contribution. And she and my dad too, they both left school when they were 14, and she was born into really disadvantaged circumstances in Glasgow. So it was education in our home, to the effect that, yes, I moved into teaching, from university, and my three sisters are all teachers too. Wow. Different subjects. I married a teacher. His sisters are teachers. So we've definitely now got teaching firmly lodged in the family. But that's the essential DNA, that there's something about education that is so important and so powerful that that was my first career. But I'd say that actually that has spilled into the political too. It's the same DNA, that life chances, that making sure that everyone, no matter what their start, has every opportunity to be their very best. And so that's how I started my education career. And I thought I was going to be a head teacher. And in fact, I qualified. I underwent the MPQH, built all the experience. But life often, does it not? It has these curveballs for us. And I was just on a sabbatical year and moving into headship then, when really difficult time, my then 5-year-old son was diagnosed with a life-threatening brain tumour. So everything changed for me. The world stopped spinning, essentially, and I stepped back from school. And it's a happy ending. His life was saved by the most incredible surgeon and his team, and a whole host of NHS professionals who even today very very committed to his well-being. So I found myself, having stepped back from school, with this enormous sense of wanting to give something back, having seen the NHS in its finest hour in that way. And every year, though, I'd think, this September, I'll go back to school. And I got involved in a local campaign while I was nursing my little boy back to health. And one thing really essentially led to another, and finally took me to Parliament, where I continued my education kind of commitment, having been the chair of the Backbench Education Committee, 1922 committee. So education for me is the sort of thread that runs through my early teaching career and leadership roles to Parliament, and now on a constituency Friday, back to school. But I was very passionate about my years in school. There's nothing more inspiring than seeing learning and seeing kids aspire. It's not easy. It's a tough gig, and as any teachers out there will tell you, it can be a very demanding, very very demanding role, and it has many challenges. But when it's good, it's very very good.
And when you're at home, your husband's a teacher as well. When he's talking to you about his day, his week, does it make you really miss the classroom and think, I'm missing something here? Or does Parliament fill that need every single week?
Well, my husband actually retired 30 years
Right.
in school. He's retired I'm trying to encourage him to join me in going back to school in these sort of emergency few weeks. But the great joy actually of being an MP is that I have a really strong connection to all the schools in my constituency.
Yeah.
So I'm a frequent flyer from early years all the way through to the sort of technical college and university. So I get to be in and out in better years. I get to be in and out. So I still get something of that school life, but no marking. I mean, perhaps it's a little bit like when you have grandchildren, or I'm not there yet. You get lots of the benefits and none of those midnight hours on recording and reporting and assessment. So I have been able to continue to enjoy kind of school life, even in my MP years.
But without the marking. And you were a languages teacher when you were in the classroom. What are your thoughts on the EBAC? How can we get more people to support languages? As a linguist, you must be very passionate about the MFL strand of that.
Yes, I am. And actually this has been very much the question of many, many, many years. And just as a measure of that, when I trained at Christchurch, Canterbury, many, many years ago, that there were sort of bursary schemes then to try and encourage linguists to come in to train to teach. It was a shortage subject when I stepped out on my teaching career, sort of 25 years ago and more, and continues to be something of a challenge, and it continues to be a challenge to really win our kids over to not just the enjoyment of learning a language, because everybody seems to have a bad story about their French teacher. Because the MPs are all sharing it now with me, now that it's come to light. I was, in fact, a French teacher. I think it can be quite intimidating. I think that's too often the experience. So we've still got that work to do to really, inspire in our kids a love of learning other languages, and also a recognition of how important it is. Because very often the pushback to me was, well, everybody speaks English. So yes, passion for languages, really important on all sorts of levels, and obviously in an international context, very important. And of course, that there are so many now tools available, so many more opportunities to hear the language and to engage in that kind of learning in very real time ways. But it does still remain, a challenge to really, raise the status of languages. But I will continue to fly the flag, clearly.
Do you think the whole Brexit thing has had an impact? I know it's impossible to prove that necessarily, but the whole feeling of other countries and our isolationism on our own. Do you think that might have had an impact on how people view learning French, German, Spanish?
Well, I wouldn't like to think that it had, and of course, clearly, there's still that rest of world to consider when it comes to language learning and the kind of outreach that we need to be that sort of global Britain. But these languages, obviously, European languages, still very important. Clearly, spoken in other parts of the world too. But of course, what we have seen in more recent years is far greater take up of Mandarin and Russian. And in fact, one of my local schools specializes in the teaching of Mandarin and has a sort of Confucius center within their language provision, which really was very groundbreaking at the time. And clearly, we do need to prepare our kids for this very international stage. And of course, rather like with musical instruments, you learn one language and it's just really good to show the proficiency then for language learning. So whatever the language it is that you study and that you sort of speak to whatever level, really helps you to prosper as a language student in any other language. It builds those kind of muscles, and it builds that kind of understanding and insight. So any language obviously is a very worthy pursuit.
Yeah. And as well as your love of languages, you also crossed the other side and you became an independent schools inspector. How was it being on the other side of the table?
Oh, well, I've been, interesting, interesting. And, I really enjoyed my time working in the inspectorate, and I think probably 10 years. So I did see, a number of schools, and I think it just opens you up to the tremendous work that's going on, because when you work in your own school, it's quite an all-consuming experience. It's got its own language and its own culture and its own rhythm, and it's a life, isn't it?
Yeah.
But sort of seeing so very many schools gave me a real kind of rich experience of the tremendous work that's going on, and the different approaches, of course, different cultures. So it was very rewarding, and I had a very positive outlook in terms of inspection, because it was always around supporting a school to be their very best, sort of recognizing what made it unique and special, and its own sort of culture and its own offer. But of course, there's always that opportunity for improvement, but not just that. Recognition. So I always really enjoy being able to feed back to schools and say, this is what we've been hugely impressed with, and this we find really inspiring, and to see the kids rising to. And I don't think schools too often don't get that kind of recognition for the tremendous work that they do. So I did really enjoy that. I always had a very sort of positive outlook on what I could, with the team, what we could give to the school to help them to continue to be their very best. But very aware what a stressful experience it can be, because I've been on the other side. In fact, in my training year, it was crazy. I was in a school in Kent, and the school was being inspected. And part of that meant that they wanted to look at the work of training teachers, PGCE students, because the school had a number of them. So I had an Ofsted inspector who was part of the school's inspection team in. I also had my subject mentor from my training college, who themselves was being assessed as part of their work. And the college where I was doing my training was also, I had four inspectors at the back of my class, all inspecting each other, the schools, the institutions. It got to a place where actually it really diffused the whole situation. And perhaps when it came to group work, I should have given them, their role plays too.
Have you had any calls, by the way, yet? Has any school required your services as of yet, or are you still waiting with anticipation for the call?
I'm pretty confident the call will come. I'm just waiting on my DBS, which I understand will come today, in actual fact.
Okay.
But so I've had to wait on for that. But just the day after, I sort of let it be known that I would be putting myself forward for this, one of my local schools called to say, come and work with us. So I know schools are pretty stretched, and so I have said, obviously French is my teaching subject, but I'll step into whatever the situation required, any age, any stage, class, subject, whatever it takes, really, to keep schools open, and to keep that face-to-face learning. And I really believe it will just be for these more trying weeks ahead. So I think, come February and sort of end of term or half term, depending on your, how you number these things. I'm hoping that, late Feb, March will be in a much, much better place. But in this immediate future, that's where, former teachers such as myself, although can you be a former teacher? I don't know. Once a teacher, always a teacher. I find that when I'm sitting in the chamber at the House of Commons. I find that when I'm travelling on the train, all those teacher instincts, they're never far from the surface.
Well, I mean,
so that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think we're so lucky that there's people like yourself, former teachers, Jonathan Gullis, Miriam Cates, Brendan Clark-Smith, conservative friends of education, good conservative MPs who've got good values, good traditional values, who really value schools, who value education, and we know will be fighting the good fight every single day. So all of our young people and adult learners as well get the very, very best experience possible. And it's really encouraging that, I'm chatting to someone else today who's so passionate about making that difference. And I think educators across England certainly can feel very, very rest assured that education is in good hands with the type of people that we've now got sat on the green benches. So thank you for that.
Well, I hope so. I mean, our commitment to education is just 100%. And I think, although it's been an extraordinarily difficult time coming through the pandemic, I think society now recognises just how central schools are to life. You close school, everything falls over. So I think, like never before, schools are being recognised as the sort of community that they are, and really sitting at the heart of everything that we aspire to be, and just so important for young people. Because whilst it's been amazing to see this sort of digital innovation, you can't replicate the chemistry, the dynamic of what happens in a classroom. You just can't begin to approach that. And there's another truth, and that is that kids learn from each other. None of that is really facilitated in the same way on digital platforms, although of course we approximate it, and but it is, to my mind, it still remains a shadow. We need to keep schools open, whatever it takes.
Well, Caroline Ansell, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I thank you so much for giving your time to the Conservative Friends of Education, and more importantly, giving your time. You are clearly a dedicated public servant, as is all of your family as well, from what you've explained to us today, and we certainly thank you for that. And please get back in contact with me and let me know once you are called to the classroom, and it'd be interesting to hear how it is different after all those years. But if you are called up, which I'm sure you will be, I wish you the absolute very best, and there'll be plenty of practitioners out there who we're happy to help you, redefine your skills if required, or assist, or possibly also accept some advice from you as well, as a very experienced linguist and school leader of many, many years. So Caroline Ansell, MP, thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. Pleasure speaking to you.